Hello, listeners, and welcome to Beyond the Mirror. This isn't just another podcast, it's a deep dive into the world of beauty, wellness, and longevity. Now, we're here to discuss what beauty really means beyond just appearances. We'll also talk about wellness, the habits and practices that keep us healthy, full of energy, and we'll explore the topic of longevity, looking at the science and realities of living a long, fulfilling life. So sit back, relax, and join us as we go beyond the mirror. Welcome, listeners. We are here today with an exciting episode. Oh gosh, it's probably a topic that a lot of people struggle with. And I'm here with my dear friend, Teresa Reiniger. Welcome, Teresa.
Thank you for having me on. This is a topic that a lot of people don't want to talk about.
Yes. And you've been in this arena for quite a while. You have your own amazing, unique story.
I do.
And you've been helping people transition through this type of experience. And you've recently even upped your game in helping them even more quickly deal with grief. Yes. And grief is a heavy
topic.
Yes. So welcome, listeners. We are excited to have you here. Maybe you've gone through something challenging. Maybe you've lost somebody you love and it's weighed heavy on you. And I know that for me, having lost I've had two miscarriages in the past. And of course, I've lost loved ones too.
Of course.
And I really felt comfort in knowing that somebody had gone through it as well.
Yes.
And I wasn't alone. And so know that you're not alone here, and we see you and we feel you, and we're going to dive in today. So tell me a little bit about your story and how you got here in making this your life's work.
And I'm going to make this very brief and quick.
A scaled down version.
Because we don't want this episode to go on for 3 or 4 hours. So again, I am Teresa Reiniger, and I have really been, like most people in the grief, have experienced grief for really pretty much all of my life. The first recollection of grief was when grandparents, and then my last sibling that was born was stillborn. And I was, I believe I was 10 when that happened. So I remember that I knew there was a shift too in my household, because when you grow up in what I call a grieving home, things change in the household, which is totally understandable. Like my parents changed with that loss. So fast forward, I got married, been married for 45 years now. But we wanted to have 6 children. And I'll go back to, I'm one of 13 living children. So I have 12 siblings. And so I wanted a big family. My husband was one of 9. And so we wanted a big family. Okay, Catholic families. I'll just say big Catholic families. So we wanted to have 6. We have 3 daughters. I had 2 miscarriages, one pretty traumatic, and my last daughter that was born was immediately delivered under emergency C-section, and then immediately went to Cardinal Glennon for surgery because she was born with a birth defect. Wow. And if you want all of that story, you have to reach out to me or listen to my podcast for that information. So that was very traumatic. Fast forward really far, they decided that they all 3 were married and wanted to have children. And that's really when my grief sort of resurfaced with my miscarriages, because that's what they were experiencing. First, infertility, not able to have children, and then lots of loss. Between 2 of my daughters, 7 losses.
Wow.
Early pregnancy losses, and I now have, though, thankfully, each of my daughters has a child, one through a surrogate, one through fertility drugs and IUI type fertility treatments, and then one through a sperm donor. So as all of that was happening, I'm like, gosh, there's not resources, there's not support, there's not help with them. Same time as they were going through that, and I was working with them through that and dealing with my own stuff and trying to help them deal with theirs. I was working at a funeral home.
Oh my.
Which I worked at for 15 years. So
wow.
Really professionally, I'll say, within the grief industry for probably 12 years.
Wow.
So from that, started my own podcast where I have women come on and share their experience. There's so much healing with sharing our stories.
Really is.
And that's kind of really from there. Now I am a grief specialist working specifically with women. I have a passion to work with women that have experienced the loss of a child, whether pregnancy or after, is really what I do. And diving deep into that's pretty new, but grief industry for me is not new. And working with people with grief is not new. Just my business to that is newer.
And so tell me a little bit about your drive for that. Like, did you, when you were growing up, did you know, like, I always knew I wanted to help people, or were you, and it might not have been like in the grief arena, but you knew like, I just love helping people?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I think that's kind of women in general, I'll say, is, we want to help. You know, I always knew I wanted to be a mom and I wanted to just nurture children. I have been a sports coach, a Girl Scout mom, and, all the things. Youth ministry at my church. So always working with people to help them and support. Huge volunteer. I probably still do a little too much. I don't know how you can do too much volunteer, but you can.
Yeah.
It can consume you. So always wanting to help.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about how you're different. So I know that there's a lot of different ways that we can overcome our grief. And majority of the time we may, seek professional help, and that is totally, what we should be doing.
Yes.
However, you're a little different. So tell me a little bit about that. And
I will say, yes, everyone, my opinion, and statistically it says really you do need to go outside of your family unit for support, because everyone says, well, I have a spouse or I have a mom or I have a sister that is supporting me, and that's great. But we hold back some things because we don't want to put all what we're feeling on them because they've already got enough. They're experiencing the same grief. So to go outside of that family unit to find support, professional support, is so important to do. So how I am different is I am a grief coach or grief specialist. And that I feel like is different for sure than a counselor or a therapist. There's just so many more things that I can do. And I'll say with that, I feel like my hands are not tied, that I can really help my client. Like I don't have to go through these steps to get to the end result. Like I can we all want to know, like, what's the root? Yeah. Like instead of going through I'll say in the medical field, like all this, like we got to do an x-ray and then we got to do, PT, and then we have to do the drug, and then we can get the MRI to find the results. So I want to go right to the end, and that's what I'm able to do more quickly without my hands tied. Because I really want to care for them as quickly and as, I'll say, gently as I can. It's a difficult, it's a hard thing for people to talk about and work through, but I want to do that in a very gentle way. But a more permanent, quicker way.
Yes, I love that. I know that you and I have talked before, and we talk about how it's a bridge, basically. It's a bridge to get from this raw, horrific, painful grief that you're carrying that is so heavy and feels like you can't climb out of this massive abyss, when you're going through it and you're first fresh, raw in it. And then there's this kind of a rainbow and a bridge that kind of you get to where you can pick yourself back up. You can do the activities of daily living again, and you can feel like you can move on and forward with your life.
Yes.
And I know that you've talked a lot about making sure that somebody who is going through that type of heavy grief knows that what you do is not to forget the person that they
No.
love, but to pick up themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, there is a time period with everyone that has experienced grief, and we kind of call it like a frozen grief.
Yeah.
It's almost like, and it depends on the situation, what the grief is, very traumatic, or, we knew that grandma was going to die, she's been struggling. So that is a little different, just how you process that than, my child was killed in an auto accident, God forbid.
Yeah.
But that's different, very traumatic. And so there's this frozen grief, where it's almost, for most people, it's anywhere to 3 to 6 months.
Wow.
And there's almost a time period for them that it is just really even hard to speak about that grief. And then you'll hit a point where, like, I can talk about it now. And so that's really a good time. Like, some people will want to go seek someone right away. And it's interesting too. It depends on that person, how they are in their personality, how they are with getting done. I could see you being like, okay, I want to take care of this right away, because that's your personality.
Yeah.
Is like, you're not a laid back sort of, okay, we'll do this. You're more of a very much, let's get going on this. And so it really depends on the person, and it's figuring that out, like who they are when they're ready. So a lot of people, probably 3 to 6 months is like really when we can dive a little into that and really start that process to help them to move forward in their grief. I do not like to, people are told, just move on, get over it. And that's a hard thing for people to see, to receive, and to hear.
Yeah. It's like so not validating.
Right.
And like saying your feelings don't matter, like just move on, like life has to still happen. But yet you are in this like frozen situation where everything has stopped and nothing else matters.
Right.
Right.
And that first year, most people, especially who I work with the loss of a child, I mean, you're really in, or, even your parents, you're in like this brain fog.
Yeah.
Like, you can't even process things in your brain. People want you to say, well, what do you need? I can help. But you don't know what your brain is not allowing for that because of the grief.
Yeah. Speaking of the brain, I know that you've incorporated some amazing new tools that help people shift that much faster. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I've done some extensive training and studying with NLP, so neuro-linguistics programming. And there's a technique in that we can really get to what I already kind of talked about, to the root of some things, to help them resolve that, which is very science-based, to really help support them in a quicker, more permanent way.
Yeah.
It's hard to explain exactly what that is, but it's very, how do I say this? It's just amazing, the results that people can achieve, and just move forward with their life, and just, my ultimate goal is to help them, support them in living life again, because when grief happens, life stops.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just to help them work through living again.
Yeah.
Is so important.
It really is.
It can happen.
Yeah. I use the neuro-linguistic tools for health and wellness in my practice, in helping people overcome issues like that they have with health. And it's so amazing to see how fast the shift happens. Like, literally, they're sitting right in your chair where you're at right now. And I'm like, how do you feel now? The energy of the heaviness or the burden or the problem that they were having before, it's almost like the energy and the heaviness of it just lifts away. And then they're left with feeling confident, more in tune, empowered, more energy, less fatigue, just because of the shifts that we've facilitated. So it is so powerful what you do in especially an area that is so tragic and traumatizing. Even in the medical field, we talk about how, stress, the levels of stress, and losing somebody that's close to you is like one of the worst things that can happen to your stress level. So
Absolutely.
I love that what you're doing is going to shift across so many different levels. Yeah.
Yes. And what I love about it too is grief affects them, and it affects every area of their life. It affects their career, their job. It affects their relationship with their coworkers, with their family, with everyone around them. It affects actually even the people that go to the same grocery stores they go to. It affects them health-wise, spiritually, and it just affects everything. And when you can help support them in this to resolve some of this and really understand and an awareness what's going on with them, it changes. I think big, so I'll say it changes more than just it changes them, which changes every relationship they have, and really it changes our whole community. Our whole society can change by this process of helping one person with what they're, because a lot of times if they've lost a child, a lot of times there's blame, there's guilt, there's shame. That's, what do I do? I should have been able to protect them. There's just so much. And to resolve all of that,
that's a lot.
And it happens quickly.
Yeah. It's a lot of shift.
Shift
happens, right?
Yes, and I love that. I'm on the podcast because, you guys do a lot with health, and it is tied right in.
Oh, yeah.
When there's loss, and there could just be, could be not necessarily the loss of a person, but there's loss of jobs, there's loss of homes, there's loss of friends, there's divorce, there's lots of loss.
Yeah.
And how that affects, and you've probably seen that, like how that affects someone's health.
Absolutely. I mean, even just during the pandemic, the division and not being the people who are extrovert, not being able to go out and have the human connection that feeds them.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen those people turn into alcoholics and drug addicts over it, because they're not getting what they need and crave from other people. And then I've seen it across a lot of other ways too. And so it is a real thing. And it is global, So you have a lot of people to help. Right?
I do. And as we all do.
Yes, right? We have our work cut out for us. This is awesome.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about some of your favorite people to work with.
I do, and people think like, oh gosh, Teresa, that's so heavy. My favorite people to work with, first and foremost, is really women. And I feel like where I really can relate and understand is those that have struggled with infertility. People don't realize the grief that comes with infertility. It comes every month, really, when there's a period or there's a failed cycle or whatever, there's grief. So those that are struggling with infertility, those that lost a pregnancy, stillbirth, and really any children, that's really where my heart is, where my passion. It's what I've lived personally myself. And then after that, it's really just, it is women. I've worked with women that have lost a parent, have lost a spouse. But it's women.
Yeah, awesome. I love that. Can you share one of your most favorite grief stories with us?
I'll share with you someone that I worked with. That in her case, this will give you an understanding of how her grief was. That I worked with her. It was the loss of her father.
Okay.
So it wasn't a child. It was a father. Children are a little more intense, so I won't share those because I'll get emotional. I'm sure.
Well,
but
too.
I'll share about this particular woman. And what was going on is she felt like she wasn't grieving like she was supposed to. We as a society think it says there's a certain way that we're supposed to grieve. Like we're supposed to be emotional and we're supposed to cry as women.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't happen, then we're not grieving, is how she felt.
Yeah.
And with talking to her, I
Wow.
quickly found out that she was not grieving, like crying, because in her whole situation, she lost her dad. And being who she was in the family dynamics, she had taken on sort of the head of household.
Gotcha.
And dad didn't cry. Dad
Yeah.
was military. He was tough. And so she almost like took that on.
Interesting.
And so it was really helping her to figure that out.
Mhm.
And she just said, I haven't really taken time to grieve.
Yeah.
Like with my stepmom, who I truly, truly loved. I cried,
Yeah.
but my dad was there. So it's
Yeah.
just really helping her. And what came down to the root of hers was she felt abandoned from her dad when he left. And then that abandonment, as we worked together, went back to an abandonment as a child.
Oh.
When I said there was a stepmom,
Yeah.
when there was a divorce.
Yes.
So it all was
Wow.
really diving in to what was that root?
Yeah.
What was that root? And we figured that out. And once you figure that out, it's kind of interesting. It's almost like a domino, like everything starts to resolve and reprogram and realign with what that initial thought process
So neat.
was.
Mhm.
And so after just working with her to do that process, when I talked to her the next day, her words, not mine, she said, I feel like the knife has been pulled from my chest.
Oh, wow.
So it was huge
Wow.
that she said there's still pain there, but the knife has been removed from my chest.
Wow, that is amazing.
Profound.
Yeah. Wow. Wow, I love that. How long do people usually work with you?
When I first started, I wanted people to work with me for like a year,
Yeah.
because there's milestones that
Huge
come
milestones, yeah.
come in that year's time.
It's like an onion, right? You're shedding some layers.
The holidays,
Yeah.
the Mother's Day, the Father's Day, the birthday, the date of death. All of those things are part of that first year. But really, working with them, within 90 days,
Yeah.
if they're committed, that is they're in a pretty good space. There's going to be things if they want to continue, but really, I would say within 90 days, we can resolve and can get them to living life instead of going to other people for years and years and years and years. I can get those results.
That's amazing.
Much quicker.
That is so awesome. And you can work with anybody anywhere?
Oh, yes, of course.
You can do online.
There's that 2020 thing that happened that people are pretty it's pretty easy to work with people all over the country or the world.
That made everybody good at Zoom.
And I can do what I need to do through Zoom, for sure. Easy.
Wonderful. And you also offer, I know you just did like a little Mother's Day bereavement. Yeah, tell me a little bit about that.
So this was my second annual Bereaved Mother's Day. So a lot of people don't know that Bereaved Mother's Day is the Sunday before Mother's Day. And it's really a day to honor them as mothers. Because many of them, it could have been a pregnancy loss or no one sees a child and they do have a child. They're just not physically here with them on earth. And so it's a day to really honor them and really take care of them.
That's so cool.
And you were there.
I was there, and it was so wonderful to see all the healing.
Yes.
And I love that the women that showed up that day, they got to feel seen, heard, and validated.
Yes.
And then they all got to share about their loved one, which helps in the healing process because, you then get to help that soul live on, and share. Because they're not here physically to share, and so I just thought that's the first one I've ever been to. My losses were 20 some years ago. I had no idea anything like that ever even existed. And it was so healing to be in the room with such amazing women.
Yeah. Well, more than anything, what women want is what you said. to be
Yeah.
heard, validated, an
Yeah.
understanding, find someone that understands.
Yeah.
And that is key.
Yeah.
And then to be able to honor
Yes.
their
Yeah.
child in that way.
And I think too, what you created that day too was a community.
Absolutely.
And I think that is so huge and so important. Since our 2020 little adventure, it has been a struggle to connect
Mm-hmm.
for a lot of people. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the biggest health complaints I hear from women, as I also help women, is that they struggle to feel connected.
Yeah.
And that breaks
Absolutely.
my heart.
And I've done some things virtually and stuff, and it's just not the same
It's not.
than being physically
Mhm.
right next to someone that gets it.
The energy's different.
Totally is.
Yeah. And you could feel the room. There was a heaviness about it, but there was also like an uplifting to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so and I can only describe it as feeling as if it was healing. That is how I would describe it.
Definitely.
Because it had both sides. And there was a lot of validation and community and connection. I thought it was amazing that you
And
put
I
that
felt
together.
really good about the whole event
Mhm.
and just everything leading up to it, because I've done the event, like I said, the year before, where half of the people that registered never walked in the door.
Yeah.
It is hard to walk into a
Sure is.
space where there's going to be heaviness. There could be tears shed.
Yeah.
We know what we're going to talk about. We know what we're here for.
Mhm.
But I really worked hard to let them know they're going to be in a safe space and that it's okay to walk in the door. And I'll share with you, like, there was only one person that did not come of the 25
Okay.
that were registered.
Yeah.
So that was a huge,
That is huge.
to be able to create that
Mhm.
safe place
Yeah.
for them,
Yeah.
knowing it was going to be.
So awesome. Now, what do you have in store coming up moving forward?
I'm going to be doing, even though we just talked about how beneficial that is, I'm going to be doing some online like workshops
Mhm.
to really support people and help people. And
Yeah.
then towards the end of the year, there'll be an in-person
Ooh,
retreat.
so
So I do want
exciting.
to make sure that I'm always doing that, is really
Mhm.
bringing people together. So not going to spill too many beans on that yet. It's still to come. It's still in the planning. I know the date of that, or
Ooh.
dates of that. It'll be right before the holidays,
Okay.
which is a difficult time. And so I wanted to make
Yes.
sure that that's when I did that, specifically did that to help
Through there.
through the
Mhm.
holidays. But there'll be some
Very-
online stuff coming
Very
before then.
amazing. Anything else in the works that's new and exciting for you?
Let's see. Anything else in the works? I don't know. I'm always got something in the works.
Yeah. That's what's fun.
Yeah. So best place, really, if you're okay with it, for
Yeah.
people to kind of stay connected with me. So free resources for you would be my podcast,
Wonderful.
where I have women come on
Yeah.
and share their stories, which are so healing to them.
Yes.
And that is Resilient Moms.
Mhm.
Hope, Healing, and Living After Loss is my podcast. So there's typically where I announce a lot of upcoming things, and then also on social media.
Wonderful. And if somebody wants to work with you, what is the best way for them to reach out?
Really, if you go onto my social media, and I assume you guys will put all that, but
Mhm.
it's Teresa Reiniger on Facebook. And then my business name is Living After Grief. So you can connect with me, send me a message there. Most of my contact information is there, or it is in the show notes of all of my podcast
Perfect.
episodes.
Wonderful.
So easily found.
And we'll connect that for our listeners as
Yeah.
well. And give me one of your most wisdom moments, like for our listeners as we wrap up, like a wisdom, one piece of wisdom that you would share with the audience.
I'm going to share something about grief.
Okay.
Just what it seems like one of the first questions that people allude to when we are connected and we talk, or whatever, whether in person or over the phone or via Zoom, is they just want to know that they're not crazy, because you do feel like you're crazy.
Yeah.
You have no idea. None of us have been taught how to grieve. And so there's no understanding of it. And so you're not alone is what I would share.
Yeah.
You're not crazy. And however you're grieving is exactly how you should be grieving, because everyone is unique in their grief.
I love that you said that. That is so true. So, so true. Yes.
Yeah.
And thank you so much, Teresa, for being on here today. Listeners, we would love for you to like, subscribe, and share. If you haven't already, write us a review. We need you to do that for us to help us get the word out there so that we can have more amazing episodes just like this.
We want to make a quick but important disclosure. The information and advice shared in this podcast are intended to provide general knowledge and understanding about wellness and health-related subjects. They are not intended to replace professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or qualified health provider with any questions that you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment, and before undertaking a new health regimen. Remember, your health is your responsibility, and it's always best to consult with a healthcare professional.